my computer.
Yep.
And where am I? I'm going to pin you. Yeah. So, yeah, it seems strange to introduce you. It is amazing just to have half an hour with you, Alex, because I know that you are super, super busy, and to give us the time to talk about your own personal journey is fantastic. So very, very grateful, and yeah, just excited to hear where our conversation goes this morning. So I got Magnus to make me a good coffee.
Excellent.
And I know that you've made a coffee, so we're
tea.
Yeah, oh, tea.
Oh, I like my tea. Yeah, tea, Jenny.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a few questions, but they're very loose questions, and it's more just to see, you know, where a conversation goes. But I am interested because I think that you're from Coatbridge, aren't you?
I am. Yeah.
Originally.
Yeah.
And I was thinking my experience of nature, I was lived in a city, so my as a kid I remember going to a caravan and hearing a wood pigeon and like thinking, oh, this is brand new. And I wondered, for yourself as a child growing up in a town, what was your experience of nature? What was your relationship with nature?
So I guess I grew up in the era where you were kind of chucked out to play,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
and that was just part of your life. So I'm the youngest of five, and I was outdoors all the time. So you know, I loved being outdoors, and it was very urban.
Yeah.
But I would be outside on my bike. There was a group of us. You know, we lived in a scheme, if you know what that means. And so there was just a group of us who would just get together. We would play tennis. We would play rounders. We would just be active and be outdoors. So I was always out in the street playing. But I mean, in terms of nature, you know, getting out into the hills and stuff, that wasn't really that easy. But once I got, my parents enjoyed the outdoors as well, and so we would kind of quite often get taken out for a drive and at the weekend and a walk and things like that. But I think the biggest influence in me was one of our neighbours ran a youth club kind of group, and he was big on the outdoors, and he would take groups of us away hill walking, as we were probably like early teens. So he would take us hill walking, and he kind of would organise every once in a while other outdoor activities. And so he really kind of introduced me to the kind of outdoors in a sense, and really inspired me, and I absolutely loved it. I just always felt that that was where I wanted to be. I was probably a little bit of a tomboy when I was growing up. You know, I wasn't really too bothered about, I just liked being outdoors. I didn't mind getting my hands dirty. I liked to be in nature. And so whenever we got the experience of a wider experience of nature, I just loved it. It was brilliant. It was great, and it stuck with me, and it has been part of my life all along. You know?
That is such a brilliant story. And thank you for the description, because I almost felt I was there on the scheme with the bikes going out, and yet,
Yeah.
and your mum and dad taking you out, but also the effect of a youth club and someone decide, you know, giving their time in order to expose teenagers to nature has obviously been a massive part of your
I
life.
think it's a really important thing, you know, and I have to say, where I live now, and I'm in nature all the time, and whenever I kind of go out on my bike, and there's trails, mountain bike trails around here, every single time, without fail, I feel hugely grateful that I have that opportunity and I have that experience. And I think back to my youth, and I think about the fact that, you know, a lot of kids don't get those experiences. And you know, a lot of kids, and this is going to sound utterly ridiculous, but there's kids out there that don't even know what sheep look like, and they've not got those experiences, and I find that really, really sad. And it's something that I think is really, really important, because the benefits of being in nature are huge. They're massive for mental health. And just to give you perspective, and I think the earlier that you can get a kid to experience that and know that they can have that in their life, I think it's so important, you know, to know you've got access, and it's free. You know, it's free.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you've developed a more day-to-day relationship with nature then, if you're living more within that. Yeah. So you're being exposed to that, and it's had a positive effect.
I think I knew from quite early on how it made me feel. And so, without digressing, but it's relevant, you know, I went off to, I came to Galashiels to study. So I came from the kind of outskirts of Glasgow to a more rural location. And that, you know, surrounded by nature, it influenced and it inspired my design work. You know, you would drive through the Scottish borders at different times of the year, and you could see the colours changing. You could see where those colours, the trees, the sort of landscape just influenced textiles. It was so obvious, and I loved all of that. I loved being surrounded by that. And then I went to London, so it was the opposite again. And I loved that experience for different reasons, but I knew that for me, I've always strived to get a balance between my creativity and my family and being outdoors. And so, you know, after London, I could have probably, you know, decided to go off to any other city in the world and pursued a career in fashion and textiles. But I had this desire to be in nature and also be near my family. Those three things, my creativity, outdoors and family, are so important to me, all three things. And I've always tried to weave them into my life. And so I came back to the Scottish borders and I started to work. And again, just being back in nature was so important. And then I kind of moved back to where I was brought up for a while, but that desire to come back here was really strong. So I came back and I've stayed. But yeah, for me, I walk to work every day, and it never fails to amaze me that I look around and I just think, I just feel really lucky. I just think, this is amazing. You know, it's just a little 5-minute walk to work, but it's just beautiful. And I'm very lucky that I can do what I do where I do it. At the weekends, we're out either walking or cycling. I feel very fortunate that is there for me. And I think I would have made it happen wherever I was. I would have needed that. I actually need it. You know, it's important. You know,
I love that.
Yeah,
need it. And also the gratitude, you spoke about that at the beginning as well.
Yeah,
sense of gratitude simply by being in nature. You know,
absolutely.
They talk in positive psychology, they talk about building up gratitude and keeping a gratitude journal, and because it's so good for our mental health, because it changes fundamentally how we think. And yet you're saying a 5-minute walk in nature to work, you don't need to do the journal, you just need to be.
Yes. It's incredible. Yeah, and you have to, you know, I can't help but look at it all and go, I am really lucky, because it's so beautiful and it's right there, it's on your doorstep. And especially this last year, you know, Roddy and I, obviously, you know, my partner, but we must have said it every time we've went out, how lucky are we that we've, you know, and you do realise that, and that then goes back to, you know, anyone, especially in the last year, that's not had instant access, or it's not been easy to get access. It must be awful. It must have been really, really difficult. And it's how do you create beautiful green spaces and spaces that people can feel that sense of gratitude, or just that kind of sense of being, you know, if they can just get and sit in a nice park or sit in a nice green space. I think that's really important. If you can't get to the countryside, you can't get out to the hills, then how do we make sure that our, you know, urban areas feed that? Because it's important. It's crucial. You know,
like a tree.
Yeah.
You know, like you see concrete and then the tree, and it's
yeah.
like,
it's a bit of a token gesture, isn't it? It's just, it's not good enough, really.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about the nature, because of where you studied and then set up your business, being embedded within your creativity and within, yeah, within your what you're creating.
Yeah,
Nature, it's woven in there as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Definitely, that's my kind of starting point in terms of inspiration. It'd be landscape artists, the landscape around me, taking photographs, and the colours. You know, the colours, the textures, the proportions, all of those things. They become quite filtered as you work through the design process, but they're always my starting point, and um, they feed into what I do. Yeah.
And yeah, for nature to be your starting point, it sounds like nature is your business partner, you know, like,
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I like that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the two of you, you and nature.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but before we go to Findra, you talked
Yeah.
about going to London, and
Mm.
but and you and the fact that you really enjoyed that, and I almost kind of get that sense of that social aspect of you
Yeah.
from the gang as a childhood and going to London, which strikes me as quite a social place. What did
Yeah.
you enjoy about London? What was it that was enjoyable?
I think one of the first things that I really enjoyed was I studied at the Royal College of Art, and so it's at master's degree level, and it's all of the creative. It's lots of different creative people. So it's architecture, car design, interiors, sculpture, fine art. You know, right across the board, it's all those different disciplines, and you're just all there together, and you can, you know, you can go and work with a sculpture student if you want. You can work with an interior design student. It's just, you're just in this melting pot of creativity, and
Right.
it was just really brilliant. And you know, the Royal College of Art held a lot of events and things, so
Uh-huh.
there would always be some creative person there showing their work, or doing a talk, and it was just incredible to be surrounded by all of these amazing creatives who you know, quite often were doing things that were going to change something in the world in terms of design. So you felt immersed in it, and I really, really loved that. And it was very sociable. It was a very social place. You know, the bar, it was called the Art Bar, was right in the centre of the School of Art. It was right in the heart of it. And I've still got the checkbook where you would write with all the little tabs. So you were £10 check. Can
Yeah.
I get a couple of glasses of wine? It was brilliant, and that's my little reminder of the Art Bar. It was absolutely brilliant. I just loved it. I loved the creativity, and I guess as well the buzz of London. So it was quite an adjustment, because Galashiels and the Scottish Borders is a very laid back place. It's a different pace of life.
Yeah.
And then to go into this city and everything is just, you know, like almost sped up. It's like just moves really fast. Everything moves fast. So it took a bit of adjusting, but I really loved it. Really
Mm.
enjoyed it.
It sounds incredible. Like,
Mm.
it sounds like quite a prestigious place to be
Yeah.
studying at master's level. So what spurred you from Galashiels and that slower pace of life to go to a prestigious place to study in the bang in the middle of London?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, it was really in my final year at Galashiels, which Heriot Watt, Galashiels, that my lecturers were the ones really that pushed me to do it. They felt that I should apply, and that I had a good shot at potentially getting in. So they pushed me, and I knew that, you know, it is very difficult to get in. There's a lot of people apply. There was only 6 places on the course that I was on, and I knew that it was quite a ruthless process to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was about March that they said, right, you know, just apply, and even if you don't get in, it means that you'll have your portfolio be all ready for you when you graduate, and you know, you'll be in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, what have I got to lose? didn't overthink it. You know, that's kind of what I'm like a little bit. I didn't really overthink it. I just thought, right, in the here and now, why not apply? And we'll deal with each step as it comes. So got my portfolio ready and applied, and then was successful in getting through to the next round. And so I got through the next round, and then my lecturer said, right, you need to know that the head of the school is a man called John Miles, and you need to know that he's got a really, you know, he's got a reputation for really frightening people, and he's, you know, he chucks portfolios out of the window and this sort of thing. And then the Royal College of Art is right next door to the Royal Albert Hall, and it's about 8 floors high. And so they're like, but you know, you'll be fine, so don't worry about it. And, oh my God. So it was coming up to my interview in London, and my dad worked for British Rail. He was an engineer with British Rail. So as a family, we got free train passes. And as my mum and dad do, and as my whole family do, they don't let you do anything on your own. They all arrive. We're here for you. We're going to support you. So my mum and dad said, I think, you know, we think we'd like to come with you. We'll all go down in the train together, and we'll kind of just hang around London while you're, you know, getting your interview or whatever. It was a sleeper, the overnight train arrived, and they said, right, we've booked a hotel so you can go and get freshened up and, you know, be at your best for your interview. And so arrived for my interview, and it's in I think it was in the 7th floor of the fashion and textile department. Got to the 7th floor and went in, and I was sitting there, and here's me, this wee timid lassie from Coatbridge, sitting there going, oh my God, you know. And at that point, my portfolio was big A1 portfolio. So I'm sitting there with this big portfolio, and I knew that in the room just off to the right was where the interviews were taking place. And I was thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen here? And, you know, all these thoughts. So anyway, this man comes out, who turned out to be John Miles. So he comes out and he has a good look at me, and he kind of, you know, and then the next thing I get invited into the interview room, and there was probably about 8 people in there. But the funniest thing was, as I walked into the interview, yeah, there was a lot of people. So as I walked into the interview room, to the left of the Royal College of Art is Hyde Park. And I walked into the interview room, and I just kind of happened to glance down, and there, sitting on a bench, is my mum and dad with their flask of tea and their sandwiches, and I could see them. And you know, it was so funny, because in that moment I just thought, do you know what? That's what matters. And John Miles, you can say or do what you want, because there's my mum and dad, and I'll come out here and I'll see my mum and dad, and if I don't get in, it doesn't matter, because that's what matters. And just in that second, it was like, right, you know, just throw the questions at me or whatever. And I had a really good interview. And in fact, John Miles and I got in a huge discussion, because he said, you're a menswear designer. And I said, I'm a textile designer. And he said, no, you're a menswear designer. And we had this massive, and I think he quite liked that little bit of to and fro, and apparently really liked my Scottish accent as well. But we had this big debate. And then in the interview process, there are also students in the process. So there's like, because it's a 2-year course, so they would have first year students in there interviewing. So at the end of the interview, he said, Christopher, I'd like you to show Alex the menswear department, because I'm absolutely convinced that she's a menswear designer. So can you please take her and show her around the menswear department? And so that was fine. And Christopher turned out to be Christopher Bailey, who went on to be the creative director of Mulberry. Burberry. Sorry, Christopher. So yeah, so that was quite fun, and that's the kind of people you were in there with, all those kind of talents, you know. And I think, you know, I've always just been me, just been myself, and that's what I've always kind of, that's what my parents have taught me to be. That's what they've always kind of said, just be yourself, you know. And so that's how I went into that. That's how I've approached everything, is just to be myself. But it was a great experience. I loved it. It was brilliant, really good, and really good from a creative point of view, you know. So
I love that story, Alex. It's just from the very beginning. You've just held me enthralled. I was very fortunate. I went to a chiasma that was considering sustainable fashion about
Yeah.
6 or 7 years ago, and Catherine Hamnett was there, and she was saying,
Yeah.
get out of Scotland, go other places and develop your creativity. And that's what I was reminded of as you were talking there, that you pushed yourself out of, you loved
Yeah.
where you were, but you pushed
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And but you also, your mum and dad supported you and went with you.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not in a long term, but do you know how
Yeah.
lovely to look out a window in this massive city and see your
Yeah.
mum and dad having their coffee out of a flask. It's like,
Absolutely.
I'm all right.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And I think that that's really important, whether it's your mum and dad or your best pal sitting,
Yeah,
or to know that, to get it into perspective, what
yeah,
you're doing.
yeah.
When you're doing something, it's like, get it into perspective of, this is important to me, and and I know that I want this to happen or that to happen, but it's about trying to find that perspective of where it is in the bigger picture
Mhm.
of what's important.
Yeah,
And it's people that are your family, or people that matter to you, and knowing that, hopefully, that you can find someone who's there to support you, that if it doesn't work out the way you wanted, or you're disappointed or whatever, that you've got that perspective that helps you to deal with that.
yeah,
Because if I hadn't got in, you know I would have been disappointed, but I would have felt, right, okay, well, what else am I going to do,
yeah,
so I think that's what my family give me, is that sense of quite grounded sort of perspective.
yeah.
I've always felt that. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm very aware that I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're
No, it's
busy.
fine.
But
Don't worry. Don't worry.
you went from, yeah, from that childhood of being in a town to the countryside, and then you went to
Yeah.
London, to the bright lights of
Yeah.
London. What brought you back to Scotland then? Why did you come back?
I guess um, an opportunity presented itself in the Scottish textile industry, and I think that I just always had that draw to trying to. I probably didn't really know or realise it. I think as I've got older, I've realised that my decision making was because there's this draw to wanting to kind of have a balance in life. And I kind of knew that by coming back to Scotland, that I was probably narrowing my options in terms of the career that I wanted to build. But I think I felt, well, family's important, and being outdoors is important. So I need to kind of find a way to fit all of that, weave that together. Pardon the
Yeah,
pun. But and I just felt like I wanted to be part of the Scottish industry. I wanted to contribute to that in my own little way, sort of thing. So the opportunity came up, and I took it, which was, my first job was for a company called Barry Knitwear, who are now owned by Chanel. And it was quite tough, actually. It was tough to come away from London, which was amazing, and the creativity and the sort of bustling city and all of that, and then come back to be very rural again. And also, to come away from that absolute sort of creative freedom, where you set the times, you turned up when you wanted, you left when you wanted, you directed your own sort of learning and stuff like that, to going into a factory environment where you had to clock in and clock out. And all of a sudden there was a lot of commercial uh, things to consider, briefs, timelines, deadlines. No, you can't have it in that color because of this, or no, you can't do that because of this. And so it was like going, right to the other end of the spectrum, in terms of experience. And I look back on that time, because at that point, they produced for Chanel and Calvin Klein and all the bigger, like really established luxury brands. And so I was involved in that. And it was almost like it was almost like a tailor doing his Savile Row training. I'd done all the creativity, and I loved it, but this was the kind of real training for the industry sort of side of it. And so it was quite a big contrast, but it was brilliant. I loved it. It was good. And I got to travel, and I've always got to travel. So I've always felt, again, that kind of sense of gratitude that I chose to come back to Scotland and be based here and have my career here. But I have travelled so much within that, and
yeah.
and that's amazing. Yeah.
And you've got a real sort of energy for everything you do. It's like, it was brilliant at Gala Shields, it was brilliant at London, it was brilliant in the factory. And yeah, it sounds like London was freedom of
Yeah.
creativity, and then you were learning how to, that had to be channeled, how it
Yeah.
couldn't remain like that, it had to be.
Yeah.
And you know, setting up your own business takes masses of courage, but setting up a sustainable business
Yeah.
takes a lot of what I'm hearing from you, in that belief in yourself, and or it's, I'm not even sure if it's belief in yourself as much as the grit and the kind of acceptance of yourself, maybe more. This is who I am, this is who my mom and dad are, this is what I've
Yeah.
done, and this is what I'm going to do next.
I've never thought about it like that, Karen, but maybe it's quite nice to hear someone else observing it. So maybe I think you do have to have grit and determination to do it. I think that's definitely, that's what sustains you when it's really hard, and it has been really hard. You know, there's been so many ups and downs, and a lot of stuff doesn't go the way you plan or hope, or stuff comes at you from each side that you didn't see coming. So you do have to have grit and determination, and I think you have to hold quite steady when that happens, and kind of, for me in my own business, it's going back to that vision. It's going back to, why did I start this? What do I want to, you know, what is it I want to achieve, and what is it I believe in? And there's just this something within me that kind of holds me steady and thinks, right, okay, how are we going to work this out or get through it, or what are the next steps, sort of thing. It goes back to that grounded feeling. It's kind of right to be quite grounded. Yeah, I think that's there, definitely, for sure.
It seems like there's that internal vision that keeps you when everything else is blowing you around.
Yeah.
So what was your internal vision like? So you had, I know that you've got a family of your own, and you had a job. So what vision burned through you that actually took you to having that courage to create your own business, and to have that sustainable aspect to it as well? What was there?
Well, I think it's always been there. I remember the first time I felt this feeling, which I can't even really describe, but I go right back to when I was about 15 or 16. And my mum and dad, and they still do, buy the Sunday Times. And my dad would take all week to read it, and I would look at the pictures and magazines and stuff. So I remember I was 15 or 16, and I was lying on my bed looking through one of the little supplements that had came with the Sunday Times. And it was Jeff Banks, do you remember him, who found Clothes Show?
Yeah.
So he had launched this brand called Warehouse back in the 80s. Yeah. And I remember lying in my bed, I could still see myself just lying in my bed, flicking through this little brochure. And what stuck out to me was, I was looking at it and I wasn't thinking, oh, I'd love that top, or oh, I want to have that jacket, or, you know, any of that. It was, I really looked at it and I went, I really like the way that's styled, or I like the colours in that, or, well, I like the way they photographed that, or I like the overall look. I was really quite inspired by just how it was presented as a whole, in terms of the brand, the visual identity, the look, the feel, the models, the choice of models, the styling. So I was very I was taking all of that stuff in, and I still remember to this day thinking, I'd love to do that one day. I'd love to create that one day. And I didn't really know what I find it quite funny sometimes, because I don't think I really knew what all of that was at that point, because I was quite young, you know. So I knew I was creative, and I knew that I wanted to do something creative, but I certainly hadn't understood it all. But I just knew there was something about all of that was there, and within me, that idea that I wanted to do that. And that's kind of been with me throughout my career. And when I had my kids, I kind of dabbled a little bit in doing my own thing, but it was very much driven by fitting around young kids and juggling family life and stuff like that. And so I think when it came to Findra, I was working for a company in Scotland, but they were owned by South Koreans. And so we travelled to Seoul a lot, twice, sometimes 3 times a year. Travelled a lot with that job, and I was designing for some of they've got a massive retail, they're a massive company called Eland based in Seoul in South Korea. And so I was designing for some of their retail stores, and then we were doing stuff for the Scottish brands as well. And again, it was an amazing experience to be able to travel to those countries and to be able to design for those markets. Again, it opens me up to, you know, a lot more experiences. But there was just something within me that felt like I just really, I needed to do something for me that was almost like setting the whole story out, not just one part of it. I didn't just want to design a product. I wanted to kind of make a whole story. I wanted to create the whole thing. And so that just, there was just that thing was always there. And I'd started to mountain bike, and I'd been mountain biking for a while, and I thought, right, I want to buy some clothes to wear. And so I went off to my local trail centre and started to look. And I love the women that I biked with were, you know, we were just this a bunch of women that got out on a Saturday morning, and we were all 35 plus up to 65, honestly. We got together and we all had responsibilities, mortgages, jobs, families, bills to pay. You know, we all had all of that. But when we were out on the bikes in these hills, it was just like all of that went, and here we were as this group of women just together, having such a laugh, having such a great time, and really supporting each other. Because mountain biking's not for the faint-hearted. You know, it's quite a tough sport, and you work really hard to climb up to the top of the hill and the mountain, and then, you know, coming down is really fun. But you know, there's some technical stuff you can try, and so we would all be really supportive, and then we'd all go for coffee and cake afterwards, and it was just, and then you'd go home and you'd be like, could face anything after that. You know, you could go home and deal with the kids, the house, the whatever. And it was just so important. Again, that being in nature, that kind of perspective, and just the whole thing. And so I went along to buy some clothes and kind of stood in the bike shop and looked around, and I was like, well, first of all, 90% of what's in here is for men, 10% in that little corner over there is for women. That's a bit rubbish. And the products were just badly designed. They suffered from the shrink it and pink it approach. They were an afterthought of the men's range. They were pretty hideous, you know, and they were just like, you know, we'll put a pink flower or a pink go faster stripe on this top, and you know, the women will be happy with it. And so there was no consideration at all. And I kind of stood there and I thought, this does not sort of speak to me about the spirit of these women that I meet with on a Saturday. It doesn't do anything. In fact, you know, it's really letting us down. So that was the kind of starting point where I thought, I'm sure I could do better. But so there was that in terms of, right, I could do this better. But then there was a lot of other ideas that came off the back of it, because the other thing was, obviously it's really cold in Scotland most of the time, and the weather changes. You can get 4 seasons in one day. So when you're out on your bike, you go out, or even if you're walking, you go out prepared for all of those 4 seasons. And so you would go out, like at that point, I felt like the Michelin Man. So you'd have all your layers on, you get on your bike, and you know, you shouldn't really layer up to start with, because you start to cycle and you build up, you know, some energy, and then you get too warm. And so you would then take your layers off and put them in your rucksack. And so I used to think, these clothes are just so badly designed, they're just not fit for purpose. And they're synthetic, and synthetic fibres don't temperature regulate, they stink, they don't, you know, so if you get really warm, they're going to wick away sweat. They're not going to wick away sweat, sorry. So your body is sweating, but your layer is cold, and you're going to get really cold. So they weren't doing anything to help you have the best bike ride or the best hill walk. They were just not really great. And I just thought, why is everything designed in this synthetic fabric? What's that all about for the outdoors? And having worked in the textile industry for quite a long time, I'd worked with merino a lot and cashmere and luxury fibres. You know, lamb's wool's not a luxury fibre, but it's a wool. And I just thought, why would you not do stuff in wool? Because wool's a natural, especially merino, it's the temperature regulation, it's like wicks away the sweat, it's just such a nicer sort of product to wear. And why would you wear all these bulky layers, you know, sweatshirts, hoodies? Oh, I just thought there's got to be a better way to do this, you know, because it's really badly designed.
Yeah.
And so that all that thought process kind of started to come into my head and come together. And I guess I just thought, right, I would really like to do something here. And it was probably about a month or two later that I just so happened to get this email from Scottish Enterprise, and they were looking for anyone with innovative ideas related to the mountain bike sector. They were asking people to come along and have a chat. And I thought, well, I've got an idea. And so I went along to this innovation clinic and I shared my idea, and there was 3 people there from different sort of government bodies, and they just loved it. They really loved the idea. One of them, well, I know all of them. I still know all of them, and I still see them in the industry. But one has became a friend, Moira, and she just really was like, "Come on, this is brilliant. This is really good." And so I thought, right, okay. But I had quite a lot of, you know, there was quite a few challenges, because at that point I was on my own with my kids, because sadly my marriage had fallen apart, and so I was bringing up the boys by myself pretty much. My husband was involved, but I was kind of, I guess, doing the biggest share of the kind of general looking after them. And I knew that one of the most important things that I could do for them was the consistency of kind of keeping the roof over their heads. You know, that was really, really important. So I didn't want to kind of take them out of the family home and have more change in their life. It was really, really important that that stayed consistent, and that I could keep their life as kind of issue free as possible in these circumstances. So, you know, I wasn't ready to just sort of walk out of a well-paid job and kind of take a massive risk. I just felt like that would be really selfish. So when I had the idea, I felt like, right, I have to really be sure that there's an opportunity here, that there is, I can see something and I believe in it, but actually, am I sure that other people want it, or there is an opportunity? So I kind of decided that what I would do was just spend time researching and reading as much about it. And I also knew that if I was going to do this, that it would be something that I wanted to build. I knew that I had to build something. I wanted to really create something that had longevity, that I could build, that wasn't just, I wanted to give it as much as I could. I wanted to give it 110% basically. So I was really clear on that. And so what I started to do was this kind of team from Scottish Enterprise, it was Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland, Scottish Enterprise, and another body. Tia, you've met Tia? Did you work with Tia?
I remember the name. I can't remember the face just now, but yeah.
Sure it was Tia. So I said to them, right, I need to research the market, and they said, right, we will help you do that. So we'll help you get access to Mintel reports, and they had decided they were going on what's called a learning journey to a big event called Eurobike out in Germany, and they said, we're taking some businesses that have potential in the marketplace out to visit this trade show, so that you can see the marketplace, you can get a feel for the industry, and, you know, spend a few days there and use that as part of your kind of research and everything. And that was really, I really enjoyed that, because I'd done lots of that sort of thing in the fashion and textile industry related to the more fashion side of things. But to go out and see this event, go to this trade show, and it was massive, and just to get a feel for what that, at that point, it was specific to cycling, what that industry was like, and wander around and look at what everyone was doing. And it really inspired me. I just felt like, yeah, I just want to do this. I want to do something here. And I think as well, there was some fabric manufacturers and things. And at that point, I thought, everyone's doing stuff with man-made fibres. Everything is man-made, it's synthetic. So am I really crazy to think that you could do stuff with wool? Is that just me, or is there an opportunity? So what I would do is I would be working all day, and then I had my kids, and I would do, have dinner, and then do the sports clubs, the homework, all that sort of thing. And then I would sit down at 9:30 at night, and I would sit till about 12:30 and just read and go online and just kind of do Google searches. And I felt, but I was so motivated that I just really enjoyed it. It didn't feel like work. It just felt like, I'm really enjoying finding out about this. And that's what I'd done for about the first year. And at the same time, we done some focus groups as well. So this Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland helped me to do some focus groups. And I remember like the very first focus group that we done was at Glentress, and I'd created all these mood board things and came up with some ideas for names and put some imagery on boards. And I had my very first prototype, which was a pair of shorts, I think it was. And we'd set up in the mountain at Glentress, and they had advertised come and have, to get women to come along to it. And I was absolutely terrified, right? Really, honestly, I was absolutely terrified. And I must have presented thousands of times in my career, presented work and talked, to different people and whatever. So, none of that was new to me, but I was absolutely terrified. And I kind of look back and I think it's because when you've got this business idea, you maybe sometimes live in a little bubble and you think to yourself, right, this is my idea, and you contain it and you can get really excited in that little bubble. And so this was the first time I was putting that out there to a wider audience. And I thought, if my bubble gets burst, where do I go next? Because if no one likes this and I'm so excited about it, what am I going to do? I don't. So, and it was a good day, and it was a really constructive day, because not everyone liked everything that I was doing. There's two girls who, again, one of them has gone on to be a friend and a very good customer. They're twin sisters, and they're very vocal, and they just told me exactly what they thought. This is what you've got to think about. This is what you've got to do. And see that you don't want to be doing that. And it was great. It was what you had to hear. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be quite vulnerable to be able to kind of move forward. So I learned a lot from that day, and bizarrely, and this is where, quite often people that have, like, when you do these like things like start your own business or whatever, there's this combination of just strange things that happen. And one of the team that were helping me with the event were going out in the car park and saying, come on, like, to any females, come on in here and see what you think of this. And this woman came in, and she was really interested. She was asking a lot of questions, and she turned out to be a buyer for Wiggle, which was the biggest online cycling retailer. And she was just like, this is really great. And she said, she's like, this is brilliant, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, do you mind if we just continue to communicate after this? Like, could I share some ideas with you? And not at that point with any view of getting into Wiggle or selling to them, but more my thought was, this is someone with lots of experience. She saw lots and lots of brands. She deals with them all the time. She'll know the industry. She'll know what works or whatever. And I just think it would be great to have her influence or her input. And she happily, we emailed backwards and forwards for about the next 6 months. And that was the point at which I was developing the product more and kind of starting to get ready to have a little collection of things. And I was still working full time. And then at that point, I joined Entrepreneurial Spark. And it was, I kind of look back in that time and think that was a really crazy time, because I would be going to Hawick, which is 45 minutes south of Innerleithen, and working all day. And remember, we used to have our Wednesday things at Entrepreneurial Spark. So, I would leave Hawick and drive all the way up to Edinburgh, and that would probably be a good 2 hours, an hour and a half at least. But there was something just driving me. It was just this motivation, this belief in it, that's what kind of got me through. So I don't even know what you asked me to start with, Karen. I can't remember.
I am just loving the fact that this is a deeply rooted story. Do you know that
Mm,
that well, first of all, the story of going biking with your pals on a Saturday
yeah,
morning, just the echoes of the Coatbridge Gang came in again. It's
yeah,
like, okay, this is the theme.
yeah,
And then
uh, yeah,
the deep rooted, the fact that you did research for a year, and
yeah,
you know that phrase, the harder I work, the luckier I get, that
yeah,
you know happened to have the buyer of Wiggle when you were
yeah,
doing more research. So
yeah,
it feels like it's intrinsic, it's just within you.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
had that whole experience, that whole career within fashion, but you were also had enough um, belief in yourself that actually when the whole industry is using synthetics,
Mm,
I'm actually going to come in and say we should be using natural fabrics here.
yeah,
And
yeah,
how crazy that was. And so to
yeah.
push against that, you'd have to have grit and determination to do that.
It, I felt like I was putting my head above the parapet. I definitely felt that I was swimming against the tide.
Mm,
But someone said to me, only, what is it, only dead fish swim with the tide or something? I don't know.
right.
But, so and, and when I launched the range, well, what had happened was I went back to Eurobike a second time. And this time, the Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland had a stand, and they'd hired a stand and they invited about 5 businesses. And I had this tiny little, not even a metre wide reel. And I just took out a variety of prototypes at that point. And it was kind of like, right, here's my little bit here,
Mhm.
and let's just see what happens. And I got a really good response. I got, from that tiny little spot, I got really good sort of feedback and a really good response. And quite a few people wrote about what I was doing. And that kind of made me, I came back and I thought, right, okay, I think I should get some stock made. I think I should get some small runs of stock. That gave me the confidence to take that next step. But even when I took the next step, and it was kind of then coming to launch, and I was going to do a soft launch, and that was in December 2014. And I was launching again. It was like I'll launch with my pals because that's a bit safe, so, um, so because I'm so brave, So a few of my friends were like, right, we're going to have a kind of almost like a Tupperware party, but with Findra,
Right.
and we'll just get a group of women together, and you just turn up your stuff. So that was like one of the first things I'd done. And then there's a little local cafe in Innerleithen, and because Innerleithen's a great place for biking and cycling and stuff like that, this little cafe is well known. And so I done a little night, I done a little event there, and was amazed that people turned up, and was amazed that people actually bought the stuff. You just don't know. And I got a lot of comments. There was definitely a lot of comments that well, why would I wear this? Or, oh, this is too nice to wear, or I can't wear that when I'm outdoors. And it's like, well, just try it, because once you try that in comparison to this synthetic top that you wear every time you go out,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you will never go back to synthetic tops. But you had to educate people in it. It didn't just happen like that, and it certainly didn't resonate with people. And it's still an ongoing thing of really kind of, you are still educating people, although I think it's a much better, well received thing now, like wool products in sports.
Yeah.
But definitely I was swimming against the tide then, and that was exhilarating but hugely nerve-wracking.
Mm.
And you just had to believe in it. You just had to think, no, I do believe in this. And
Mm.
and then I went on in the February to go to the London Bike Show, and I was recognised as a brand to watch there. So that again was another little indicator that, right, okay, something's going,
Yeah. Yeah.
what the choices I'm making are right. Yeah.
And you're a runners, is it Runners World Eco Hero? I noticed as well.
That was great. Yeah, that was really good. I know.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
Alex, I'm really aware that I was thinking we might have half an hour. We're almost at the hour. We've got 10
I'm
minutes.
okay.
The hour's up. And there's a few folk on the call. So before we sort of conclude, I just wanted to ask, does anyone here have a question that they want to ask Alex? I've got tons, so don't feel you have to, but I also don't want to prevent anyone from asking a question. So is there anyone here who wants to ask anything?
Silence.
Cool, that's fine. So we started off in nature and thinking about, oh, here we've got something. Sorry. Can I ask about packaging? Why plastic wrapped?
So that's a good question, and so it's all it's recycled packaging. We are actively working on moving away from that at the moment.
Cool.
One of the challenges is that we've got to protect the garments. So our supply chain, garment bags are clear packaging quite often, but everyone is aware of how that needs to change, and it's something that we're doing and working on right now, is to change it. So it goes back to that being a small business, and minimums and a variety of things, and it takes time to get every aspect of your business to where you want it to be. It takes time. So yeah, good question, and we are actively moving away from it. For autumn, we are looking at using biodegradable kind of cloudy coloured bags.
Brilliant. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jo? Is there anything else you would like to ask? It's a great question. Thanks for asking. Barry. Just wanted to say it's been really interesting to hear the journey to this point and growing your business in Scotland. Yeah, I would agree, Mary. I find it really interesting, the organic way that it's grown from your childhood and your family to where we are now. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's personal information. But in sharing it, we've not even got to Findra, really. We've got to the launch pad. We need to do a part 2. But yeah. And Joe's got another one. Let me just see. Yes, thanks for that. Can I also ask, what other sustainable products are you thinking of bringing out? So I know that you do the core, where you don't do seasonal and whatever, but is there anything, Joe's asking, that any sustainable?
Yeah, we're working on, we're just about to launch some leggings, which in the next few weeks, padded and non-padded. And these are using a sustainable fabric, a recycled nylon fabric, which I'm quite excited about. So we're launching them, and the pad is also an eco type pad. And then I'm developing quite a few products that are recycled fabrics for the more technical stuff. So we have our jacket, which uses recycled coffee beans in part of the fabric structure. I am actively looking at lots of options in terms of trying to source recycled fabrics. I keep getting told by suppliers, the minimums are really high. It's really frustrating. And I've had to get to the point with a few suppliers where I've said, well, unless we use a recycled fabric, we can't work together. And so it's that, to me, that's what's taken a bit longer for me to grow the range, because I'm trying very hard to find the right fabrics and work with the right people, and that takes time.
Yeah, it
doesn't happen overnight. So
we had just to finish, just to say also, Joe says, I'm a big Findra fan, love your products, with a heart emoji.
Chatted. So
we had a meeting, a public discussion with policy makers on Tuesday night, and that whole concept of where are the subsidies, where is the investment from a national level on sustainable business, and what you're describing just now about, okay, we don't know what to do with our fabrics, we don't want them to go into landfill, we don't even have doorstep recycling for fabrics, so tons of, even if it's your knickers and socks, are going into landfill, but a lot more, obviously. So is there anything that you would say on a national sort of governmental, it would be great if, you know, if you had a dream, it would be from a business owner's perspective, is there anything that you would say? Sorry, I'm just landing that one on you, but
No.
just when you're saying you can't use
Yeah.
those recycled products.
So I think they need to support brands or companies in general that are kind of putting themselves out there to be better businesses and to go against the tide and not just go with what's easy, because I could have lots of designs in the range because I could choose to work with someone that will give me what, you know, a fabric. There you go, lots of fabric options, but they're not sustainable, they're not recycled. And so the progress for me to possibly grow the business or grow the range is slower because I have to work really hard to get to that person that's prepared to say, okay, and you do have to do this. You have to find, you know, one of our suppliers, it was like, you're too small for us to work with. And this was 2 years ago. And you keep pushing and you're like, yeah, but I have to start somewhere, you know, and how do you know where I'm going to be in a few years' time? So you have to break down those barriers and then try and build strong relationships. And I think that small businesses like myself and others need some sort of support whereby you're recognised for trying to break these barriers or pushing on with really big challenges, which are, you know, things that take longer, or how do we overcome like these minimums around I want that fabric because it's recycled and sustainable, but how do I overcome the challenges of having to deal with the minimums, or there's a massive surcharge, can we be subsidized for, you know, if there's a massive surcharge, someone can say, right, well, you can get support for that because you are trying to build a better business, you know. So something like that. I've not thought that through, Karen, in any great detail, but I guess it's how can we as small businesses that don't have masses of resources in terms of team or finances be supported to ensure that we continue to make good decisions and that we don't feel the pressure to make the quick fast decision just to move on, you know. Something like that. I don't know.
You know, when you think back to 15, 16-year-old Alex lying on her bed reading about Jeff Banks and seeing not just the garment, but the whole process around presenting the garment to you in a magazine, that's what's echoes of that and what you're saying just now. It's not just presenting the sustainable product to the customer. It's all that design process behind it, all the components of that perhaps if the government is, you know, declaring a climate crisis and saying, okay, we've got to do something. Okay, here's a company who wants to do something. How do we support you? How do we become part of that process?
Absolutely.
Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's been great to speak to you. I've really enjoyed it.
Quickest hour, definitely. But yeah, thank you so much. You know, the fact that nature is your business partner and the gratitude you have for nature is amazing. Yeah, I'll just let you finish if there's anything that you want.
I've just really enjoyed talking to you. It's been so enjoyable, but we always enjoy talking to each other anyway. But yeah, you've got some stuff out of me, I guess.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
No, it's been good, and I really love that you've asked me. So thank you very much for asking me to come along and talk. And yeah, thanks for everyone that's joined us this morning. I appreciate people coming along and listening. So yeah, it's been good.
Elle said, thanks so much. Great talk. Loved learning more about Findra. And Joe says, thanks so much for the presentation. Looking forward to seeing more to come from Findra. So there's a lot of Findra love here. And Alex love. Thanks so much. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.